Hey guys, hope you've been keeping well. Welcome to another Frontier Indica video. As all of you would already know, there was a major confrontation between troops of the Indian Army and those of the People's Liberation Army in the Galwan Valley area of Ladakh on 15th of June. In this skirmish, 20 of our soldiers lost their lives and many others were wounded, while the Chinese are also believed to have suffered a large number of casualties. And although the loss of the lives of so many of our brave men is tragic to say the least, this engagement has at least made it clear that the current Indian government will not be as docile as previous ones when it comes to China nibbling away at Indian territory. That being said, the Modi government's handling of official PR regarding the Galwan incident has been vague at best and counterproductive at worst. First, our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, claimed that our troops were actually armed when the confrontation took place. And then, the Prime Minister himself maintained that there had been no intrusion or occupation of Indian territory. Such claims seem at odds with the general narrative on our side that the Chinese were the aggressors and we were the defenders who stood up against the PLA threat. The reason why elements of the government's official statements seem to be in contradiction to the general Indian narrative is easy enough to understand. There will be nothing to gain if the government meekly admits that unarmed troops on our side clashed with Chinese troops in order to evict them from what we perceive to be our territory. Maintaining ambiguity around the subject is much more useful, especially considering that would allow for a suitable political narrative to be crafted prior to the Bihar elections later this year, as well as the assembly polls in Bengal, which are also not far away. The political treatment by the ruling party of the Galwan incident is only to be expected in an established democracy like ours. Any other party in power would have done the same thing and exploited the situation for as much of a PR boost as possible. At least in the Modi government's case, they've given a much more free hand to the army to tackle the incursions. But the key issue remains that the very nature of our democratic setup often leaves us divided before the totalitarian Chinese state, which is more than willing to exploit any such weaknesses. What's more, our Indian knee-jerk reaction to every situation is contrasted by the cold and calculating wit on the other side. Not only did Chinese state media not pay much attention to the clash, the response from Chinese officials also spoke about the issue in a very matter-of-fact way. While the Chinese side deals with any geopolitical disputes in a dispassionate, almost stoic manner, our democratic order means that the response on this side will almost always be at least partly shaped by popular public opinion, rather than simply cold strategy and realpolitik. This sentimental way of dealing with China needs to stop. The government has to make sure that critical national security issues don't become the subject of shouting matches on TV networks, and also that the scope for these to be made the flashpoint of the usual to and fro between the opposition and itself is also reduced as much as possible. Furthermore, the focus needs to shift to long-term thinking. In the most likely scenario, the BJP looks like it is well positioned to stay extremely dominant at national level politics for many years to come. Keeping that in mind, it has to stop thinking in terms of 5-year election cycles and understand that there is a great game of civilizations that is being played at the world stage. And that is a game where players plan for decades, if not centuries, into the future. Take for example China's plan to be a modern and prosperous country by 2049, which can be interpreted as the objective of becoming a fully developed country by that year, and perhaps even the dominant superpower in that year. Accordingly, the Chinese state has invested heavily in next generation technologies, and the success of this forward planning is there for all to see. 2/3 of the world's high-speed railway tracks are in China. The country also has 70% of the world's 5G subscribers. There are many other examples, like the rapid deployment of electric vehicles in major Chinese cities, the numerous Chinese companies working on self-driving technology, automation, and other critical areas. India may be a small economy relative to the US and China right now, but it has demography and diplomacy on its side. We are not the only country wary of the rapidity with which the Han Imperium is reasserting itself at the world stage. ASEAN, Europe, the US, heck, Even some powerful circles in Russia are alarmed by the Middle Kingdom's increased belligerence. India must tap into Western know-how, Southeast Asian trade routes, and the goodwill of the rest of the world to become the next economic superpower. Even if we don't exactly match China's economic power in the next 2 decades, the very fact that our GDP can become 50 to 60% that of China's in that time frame means that we and the countries that choose to ally with us can negotiate from a position of strength as a mighty counterblock to the Chinese state. Moreover, it's time to stop dragging our feet on internal reforms. 6 to 7% GDP growth is just not good enough for a country like ours, which still has so much low-hanging fruit to be picked. Bold and oftentimes politically unpopular moves have to be forced through. Half the population working in the low productivity agricultural sector is just not going to cut it. We need massive new urban redevelopment, rational zoning laws, and most importantly, something akin to China's hukou system, whereby urban migration is controlled and directed smoothly. Our judicial, police, and bureaucratic systems also need a total overhaul to expand state capacity and ensure the rule of law reigns supreme. Companies are not going to invest in a country where it takes years, if not decades, to enforce a straightforward contract. People are not going to start businesses in a system where you need to come up with 50 documents just to open a family restaurant. Now more than ever, we need to have a national vision to exploit the inherent advantages that India has and play the great game of civilizations at the level of grandmasters. The time for amateur guesses in the dark has long since passed. And with that, we'll end this episode, guys. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. We'll do a lot more content like this in the future. And if you want to stay updated, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified about our latest videos.